Morning, everybody. My name is Peter Giuliano, and I'm the Chief Research Officer for the Specialty Coffee Association. And welcome to the second episode in a webinar series that we've designed around responding to the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on the specialty coffee community. I'm here with my co-host, Scott Callender, who is the Vice President of Marketing and Consumer Strategy for La Marzocco. And in this episode of the webinar series, we're going to look at what we're calling the pivot to e-commerce. It was very clear when we did our research on the impacts to the specialty coffee community that those companies that were able to pivot to online sales were faring a lot better in the current environment than others were. So this episode of the webinar series is dedicated to that topic, to exploring what that pivot to online sales looks like, and how we can develop some best practices about making the shift to online sales if you're not already there, or expanding your e-commerce if you've already got an established e-commerce platform. So to explore that, we've got a panel of experts in this. The first is Heather Perry. She's the Vice President of Clatch Coffee here in Southern California. Also joining us is Colin Harmon, the owner of 3FE in Dublin, Ireland. We've also got Alex Hollywood, Partner Manager for Trustpilot. And also joining us is Martin Guerrero from, he's an expert in e-commerce transition from Square, and myself and Scott Callender. And I should mention that this webinar series is made possible by La Marzocco, and so we're grateful to them for that. Okay, so let's begin with the retailers in the room. Both of you at some point have well-established online e-commerce platforms, and but I know that both of your businesses were established before those platforms existed. So can you tell us, maybe Heather, start to tell us a little bit about Clatch's transition into e-commerce and what that journey was like?
Yeah, so we've been in business for 27 years, and we've been doing e-commerce now for about 22 years, somewhere in that range. And when we started, we were roasting in our San Dimas store. And for us, moving online, we were working with an intern from a college at the time who was doing some graphics for us, and they had kind of helped us to set up a website. And every day around 3 p.m., we would take out the FedEx computer and the laptop and put it on a table in the cafe and go to the portal and literally print the labels. And that was what our setup was. For probably a year or two, every day you would kind of see us this mad scramble between 3 and 4 to get the printer out and get the labels printed and get them slapped on boxes. And that's how e-commerce started for us. It was really small. It was started just because people were saying, hey, I love coming in, but I moved, or, I love your coffee and I want to send it to somebody. How can I do this? And that was what it really started with for us. It was really small. It wasn't with an intention to immediately grow, if you will. It was just kind of to fill an immediate need that we had of people asking for it. And it was done low key. And I think that's the great thing about e-commerce is most of the time, if you have this established business of some sort, whether it's wholesale, whether it's retail, you've got customers already there and they're looking to support people right now. So they're not going to be too picky on like, oh, the website wasn't pretty enough or this wasn't done right. You know what I mean? They just want to be able to support you. And I think that's kind of a really easy win for people right now to make a move to e-commerce.
Okay, great. Colin, how about you? What was your journey like?
So we've been going for about 12 years now. I think maybe that it's probably about I'd say 8 years ago we started selling online, and most of that was probably down to the fact that my business partner Steve Layton runs a predominantly web-based coffee roastery in the UK called Has Been. So Steve has a small share in 3FE, and he was always of the mind that we should just have something set up. So for a long time, I'm going to say 4 or 5 years at the start, it was very low volume, probably lost money, but it made some people happy who ordinarily would come to the shop and buy in person. And I was conscious of wanting to just have something there. And over the years, it kind of just, ticked along that we started doing subscriptions, and then we started building it. And then I think it really became viable in a real sense I'd say about 3 years ago. We were fortunate in that we decided about a year ago to take on somebody to drive it full time. And at the moment, our wholesale business, like many other roasteries around the world, has dropped off a cliff. We're probably down like 95%. But what has kept us going through these hard times is the web shop. The web shop has been flying along. So it means we're still operational in some aspects. And we are fortunate because we've invested in the infrastructure and the systems necessary to make that happen. And I know there's a lot of businesses out there that are trying to hack something together very quickly at the moment, and it's a very difficult thing to do, as well as exist in the current landscape that we're in. So I'm thankful that we have it there, and it's been a blessing.
Yeah, great. Okay, so Martin, listening to those experiences, both of them mentioned like some challenges getting started, and Colin just mentioned hacking things together. Do those things? I know that you work directly with companies that are trying to scramble to get a web shop open at the moment. Can you share with us some of the commonalities of those experiences and some opportunities there?
Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, listening to those stories, I think that both of them hit a really good point. There's people want to be loyal to you, right? They want to send you their business if they can to help you in any way they can, especially in this this tumultuous climate that we're in right now. And it's an interesting time for businesses to be switching to e-commerce. And there are some common things that you want to look out for, some best practices. And we do see folks who had a web presence simply to have a web presence, but really relied on that foot traffic, right? Drive-ups and walk-ins for their business, and are needing to pivot to online sales 100% right now because they're not allowed to have dining options currently. So yeah, we are seeing a lot of shops pivoting to online and wanting to, like I said, hack something together just to have something there, because they're hearing from their community that they want to support them, want to be able to get their favorite coffee, during these times.
Yeah, so one of the things I heard both Colin and Heather say is that at first it emerged as almost a nice thing to do for customers, and not as necessarily as an important part of the business. But then it sort of shifted into that over time, and now, of course, it's like super critical. But can you explore a little bit more, maybe, Colin and Heather, about how that connection is? I mean, it seems like maybe some of your customers in the physical space are wanting to have a little bit more connection, outside of that space, or be able to, or something. Is that the prime motivation for things, or was it really about developing another business channel?
You want to take that, Heather?
Sure, I'll start. When we started it was not to start another business channel. And I think what's interesting along the lines of what Colin said is we did it because people asked for it, and that was kind of what made it work. I think what's interesting about e-commerce, and I think you would agree with this a little bit, Colin, is you get out what you put in. It's funny that the more you put into it, the more work you do, the more you invest in everything from the people that are developing it, to the marketing that you put into it, to the ads that you put behind it, the more you do truly get out of it. It's kind of like any other business. And I think a lot of us kind of just take it for granted when we start up. It's like, well, we'll just put it in and see what happens. And then it's like, oh, wow, this can actually make a good amount of money for us here. I think people get it because it's that same comfort that you can't necessarily go to your shop every day, but being able to get that coffee online, I think a lot of people do get that great connection to. I think it does evoke memories a lot of times when people have that bag at home. They're not meeting with their friends, but maybe they're on the phone with their friends, sharing the same cup of coffee that they would have gone into the cafe for. So I do think that's a big part of it as well. I know for us, we didn't get into it thinking, okay, this is another business stream, and we had a business plan for it and how we were going to grow it. That wasn't how we got into it. We do now, and it's a very viable part of our business, but that definitely wasn't how we started.
A lot of things start, I think. I think for us, I mentioned has been in the UK before, and the reason for that is the UK is the world's most advanced online buying market. Now, in Ireland, we're not quite as advanced as the UK, But and it takes a lot from me as an Irish person to say this. We tend to look at the UK and copy what they do. And that's why Steve was so on top of me, because we got an insight into what it could be like. Now, I definitely think some of those things have happened. The ability to set up a web shop it's far easier today than it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Like, it's so easy to get something that's a ready-made solution, and that's made people more likely to set one up. But also, people are getting more used to buying online. So a lot of Irish people would travel to the UK, work there for a few years, and come back, and they get used to buying their steaks and their trousers and their milk and their coffee online, and that habit becomes normal. And once you start buying online, especially with something like coffee, it's not something that you kind of jump in and out of. People just will do it over and over again. So I think having that insight into what it would be like meant it moved along faster. And I think definitely social media has had an impact on that now. So, like, as people use, like, Instagram is a great tool for us. You put a picture up and people say, oh, I can buy this online. I didn't realize I could do that. And we have this whole new audience there that we didn't have before. So it's the international aspect for us is quite interesting as well. We have about 35,000 followers on Instagram. I think the last time we looked, there's somewhere in the region of 12,000 of those live in Ireland. So we have quite an opportunity to sell things abroad to people as well. So it might not be, again, the ongoing business, but we do get people that would, Irish people who've emigrated to the US or to Australia or to Southeast Asia. They might get something for their partner as a present to remind them of home, or you get people doing maybe guest copies for that kind of thing as well. But that's another nice little bonus that it's a wider audience and a more scalable aspect, because the coffee shop is limited to the people that come near the coffee shop. With a website, right, it can go anywhere.
Yeah, interesting. So Alex, you're
just to expand a little bit on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that shift. I mean, where you've seen the progression, right? So you had a website simply to have the website to let people know you were there, what your hours were, what your address was, right? Something simple and basic to drive traffic into the business. And then it progressed to, hey, yeah, I've now moved. I really miss your beans. Would you be able to ship those to me? And then business is shifting to, okay, well, we have a demand for, other states, other countries looking for our beans. We have a following to then offering, like you said, people wanting to just order it online and developing those habits of just having that available all the time. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of all of this, as people are now having to adapt to only ordering online and to be able to pick up. So it'll be an interesting progression.
Alex, thanks, Martin. Alex, you're an observer, a longtime observer of this kind of space, and I know that you've been watching closely over the past few weeks. We've been talking up to now about the evolution of e-commerce over the years, but things have really changed in the past few weeks, haven't they?
Yeah, so hi everybody, I'm with Trustpilot, and just to give you some background, Trustpilot is a online reviews platform where anybody in the world as a consumer can go and read reviews on businesses and leave a review for a business. So we work with our clients who are asking for reviews. And so what we've seen in the last couple of weeks is that, of course, everybody is trying to become an e-commerce guru. But over the last few weeks, we've definitely seen it spike where if you were kind of thinking about it, or maybe you had a website, or you had a great Instagram following, we're definitely seeing that people are saying, okay, now is the time to get this up and running. Now is the time to utilize all the technology that we have in place and go full speed ahead. We're definitely seeing, on the Google side of things, Google Trends, we are always looking for search keywords. So not only are consumers leaving reviews on Trustpilot, it actually helps our businesses be found on Google for their SEO. So anybody that's attached to Trustpilot.com will actually get ranked really high. And so we value that online reputation, and we value trust and transparency, because consumers, they might love your brand, but maybe somebody that's a new consumer and searching for coffee, may not have heard of you, and they're looking for that online reputation. They're looking for that safety and those social proof signals that say, I can buy from this company, I trust them. I was just looking up some Google trends for coffee yesterday, and did you guys know that instant coffee Google Trends is up 600% right now? So if you are in instant coffee, this is good news for you. Coffee filters is up by 120%. And then I noticed that there is a trend going around. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but Dalgona coffee. There's a lot going around about how to make a Dalgona coffee. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities to do selling through different social channels, and then utilizing that online social proof. If someone were to Google your coffee brand, we want to make sure that you're ranked on the SEO side of things. The other side of the Google Trends that we've been seeing are subscription services. So that's good news. Food industry has skyrocketed. We're seeing a lot of people come to Trustpilot that do online learning. So if you guys have online learning classes about coffee, because that falls into the hobby and niche, right? So that's skyrocketing as well for e-commerce. So there's a lot you could do to engage the audience you do have, and also increase more consumers as well. So on a growing categories for e-commerce, 1 out of 100 for the fastest growing e-commerce in the last 2 weeks. Just to give you an example, number 24 was toilet paper. Number 77 was coffee. So that gives you some perspective how important coffee is in someone's life right now, right? And we want good coffee because we're home all day. And I had a yoga instructor actually say to me yesterday, that's someone who's very zen, right? She said, I have to get my 3 cups of coffee in a day. So if someone zen needs their coffee, it's definitely needed. So we're definitely seeing an increase on anybody that's doing online shopping. Consumers are looking for those social proof signals, and usually it's in the consumer ratings. It's usually in knowing that consumers they trust your brand. They've bought from you before. They're seeing it as social proof. It's like word of mouth.
That's really interesting. I wanted to jump in here. Thanks, Alex. I mean, one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is that, people aren't drinking less coffee right now. That's kind of an interesting idea. I think they're just drinking maybe worse coffee because they're all drinking coffee at home. And kind of your point about, as a whole, instant coffee is usually a little bit of a lesser quality, not always. But there are a lot of people out there drinking coffee. And so one of the things that I'm really curious to ask Heather and Colin about, kind of what are you seeing in your business right now that's really spiking in traffic or being successful on your e-commerce site? Can you talk a little bit about, if you're seeing a spike in your online education, or what types of products on your site are selling?
Will I start this time?
Yeah, Colin, you.
I think definitely what we're seeing a lot of engagement with is we, like many of our other competitors in the European market, at least anyway, are doing a lot of brew guides online. Just very simple ones, just, nothing with any great production value, just an iPhone and a mic, and then off you go. And because we're just getting loads of questions from people, so we've like a little intercom bubble on our website, and people are just asking, how do I brew this? Like, I've never done this before, and it's interesting to see that happen. We're also seeing a lot of people buy espresso machines, like home espresso machines. So I think that's seen a surprising spike as well. So I think people are, they're interested in getting drip coffee, as you guys would call it, at home. But it's also interesting to see the people that have, the disposable income there are just, actually maybe I just want a cappuccino every day. I'm used to having a cappuccino every day, and if I'm going to work from my office, I'm going to keep doing it. So I'm sure a few of them are business expensing it to get it done, because it's not a cheap market to get into, but we're seeing a lot of that. And then more than anything, there's lots of things. And I think we're seeing a shift. I don't think it'll stay at the levels that it is now forever, but I do think a lot of people will stay there. So when things hopefully and things go back to normal, I think a lot of people will still continue to buy beans online as well. So I think that there's a shift there. And what I'm saying to the cafe owners that we supply and to all our staff at the roastery and in wholesale and at the shops is that we can't presume that everything is going to go back to the way it was. Maybe it'll be 95% or 90% of what it was, but maybe this will be the thing that triggers a sea change in the way coffee is produced and drank around the world. So we have to keep our minds open because we don't know where we're going from now on. So it'll be interesting to see what sticks. But the example that I kind of come back to is we have Tesco here, which is suppose your equivalent of Walmart. So for anybody that isn't from Ireland or the US that's watching, it's just a large supermarket that does, you know, a large range of products. And they very recently have started to do home deliveries. And what we did that, we got, you know, our groceries delivered to our house, and then we just kept doing it. So it wasn't the case that like, we just every now and again we'd dabble with a home delivery from the grocery store. Once you do it, you generally go, yeah, I'll just keep doing this. And I think Amazon has got a lot of subscription models that are the same. People tend not to just, you know, come in and out of it. They tend to just stick at it, you know. And we're seeing that with our subscription numbers. They're mounting every week. And I feel like a lot of people will continue to visit cafes because there's a social engagement that we can't sell people over the internet that cafes will always require and provide. But I think that the bean sales, we might see a shift now online, and that might continue to go.
Yeah. Heather, what are you seeing in your business?
Yeah, similar along the lines of what Colin said, you know, espresso machines are not our bread and butter by any means, and all of a sudden we're selling like one a day, which is a lot for somebody like us where it's, you know, we knew before this would sell one every other week maybe. So that's been interesting. Typically online, we sell heavy amounts of espresso. It's something that we've become known for, and so that's typically what predominates. We're selling a lot more single origins, and I feel like because people can't go into the store and get their brew bar, it's something that for us, we've seen it take in a lot of our Ethiopians, a lot of our Kenyans, surprisingly enough. Like that's what we're kind of seeing, interestingly enough, have a substantial uptick over before this all started, if you will. We're still selling everything else that we were, but the major uptick for us has been more in that single origin amount, which has been interesting.
One question I have for just kind of to piggyback on that for a second. Colin, I noticed you offer pre-ground coffee on your shop. Do you also offer pre-ground, Heather?
Yeah, people can select it as an option. One of the funnier things that we're seeing in both our retail environment and our online environment in slightly different extremes is this little bit of, it's like, I don't want to say it's the end of the world, but I literally feel like people are looking to indulge. So in our cafes, we do coffee shakes. We have never sold so many coffee shakes as I feel like we have the past 2 weeks. Same thing online, geishas that we sell, these high-end coffees. It's just kind of like, why not? Let's just do it. I don't know how much longer it's going to be here for. And I definitely feel there's like this indulgence that people are having right now because you don't know what tomorrow brings. So enjoy today. Like we're all stuck wherever we may be. Let's make the best of it. I definitely feel like there's a little bit of that indulgence factor as well right now.
Huh. I've definitely been eating more double stuffed Oreos than I have in a very long time.
Just on that, I
think a great thing, you know. Colin, have you seen any uptick in pre-ground? I've just been thinking about like all the people stuck at home that maybe want a little bit of a higher end coffee, but haven't trained themselves how to do all the process. That's kind of something I wanted to touch on.
Well, I think we've actually only been doing pre-ground coffee off our website, I could be wrong, for about a year now. And at the time, it was a decision that felt like it took 5 or 6 years to make. And ultimately, we didn't do it for a long time because we want to guarantee freshness. And I think there's a lot of questions that come into that kind of sphere in coffee circles. And ultimately, I realized that at our retail locations, we were grinding like 60 or 70% of beans we sold anyway. So people would buy them in whole bean form, or we'd grind them for them, reseal them, and then give them some, they take them home. So it was exactly the same, you know. So I was like, well, you know, why am I doing this? It seems like a principle that doesn't have any basis. So we switched over to having, you know, the pre-grind options. Within a week, it was like, well, that was worth it. And we didn't even advertise it. I just wanted to run the system to see how it worked. So what we tend to see is people come on, they buy, you know, pre-grind coffee, and after a few months pass, and then they buy a little hand grinder, or they buy, you know, and I always say to people, you know, drink coffee at the level that you're at. You know, if you really want to, you know, go up the level, that's fine, and we'll sell you all the gear. But if you're liking pre-grind coffee and you're just making it in a French press at home, keep doing it until you're bored with it, and then come back to me. You know, if you want to force the issue, I'll take all your money off you right now. But it can be an expensive process. So I'm glad we have that in place, actually, because at the moment we're pre-grinding most of the coffee that's going out.
Yeah.
and or at least a good proportion of it. And we're lucky that that system is already in place.
Fascinating.
Yeah, that is interesting. And one of the I do, that makes me think that, there is some opportunity right now because, we've got people who maybe haven't done it before. I know we've all had this experience. I was talking about it a little bit on social media where suddenly people in my friends network are asking me questions about how do I make good coffee at home. I've become so accustomed to going out to get my good coffee, and now I'm in my house. I want to make good coffee. What's the resources that I need to do it? My first answer is always to reach out to a roaster, that they love and get there and improve their coffee. A lot of times, just as you say, Colin, they're not going to. Grinding is not the first thing that they want to do, so you can get them in that way. I was also though interested in this idea, and based on some of the consumer research that we've done, I know how important going to the coffee shop as a simple indulgence is for people. And oftentimes, we would hear from consumers who would report to us that that was the nice thing that they did for themselves in the day, or maybe the first nice thing that they did. And I, of course, remember that as a barista, a parent coming in, after they've taken care of the house and their kids and stuff. And this was the nice thing that they were doing for themselves. Especially coffee can still be that in the home environment, but they need some way to make it special. And I think that's where specialty coffee comes in, and reaching out to a special roaster for a special coffee, and then preparing it in a special way in their own environment, is probably, is an opportunity, is a market that's sort of a little bit new and special. Alex, does that resonate with you at all, given what you see as sort of trends in the market? I'm talking about like this special idea or better or indulgence kind of thing.
Yeah, right now we're seeing an uptick for people coming to Trustpilot and certain trends with the food industry, with hobbies, with delivery service. And I think coffee can tie into all of those, ideas, depending on, sort of what you're in the industry of or what you're selling online. But I think that there's an opportunity to become even have a broader brand awareness for coffee and for your products, but then also, making sure that your customers are loyal to you and they continue to keep coming back to you if they're used to coming to you in the retailer, in the storefront. I'm in New York City. We love our coffee here. We love walking around and getting our coffee in the morning. We love getting it on the break. We have great coffee retailers here. And I think, we're sort of missing that aspect. And so I know last week I was trying to Google, how can I get coffee delivered that's already fresh and made, right? Or what kind of special milk can I buy that will make it taste more like the coffee I used to get? So there's definitely a lot of opportunities to educate and your current consumers, while also making sure that you are showcasing the customers that do love you to potential customers.
Great. Todd, let's get practical for a second here. I know people need. Colin, you mentioned that there's a wide number of platforms that people can use, and it's in some sense it's easier than ever to launch an e-commerce business or grow an e-commerce business. I know Square launched an e-commerce platform last year for Square sellers that's been, I think, really useful for those that are already Square sellers that are trying to expand their online sales. Are there other platforms out there that are useful for other types of businesses, say roasters? Let's talk about platforms a little bit. Is there are there any platforms that are emerging as especially interesting?
Is that what you're asking me?
I'm asking anyone.
I mean, I can jump in on that just a little bit. There's one interesting program going on right now that Cropster is working on called shipsbeans.com. And what they're offering is to put up any roaster's coffee and give them their own little store within the shipsbeans.com environment. So if there's somebody out there who hasn't yet set up e-commerce and they're looking to do that, Cropster's making it really easy with that. That's kind of like one of the easiest entry points that you could have right now. Another way to do it, if you want to do it and start building a business that's more of a long-term idea, is Shopify, of course, offers, you know, kind of templates, and they're kind of the leader in offering e-commerce solutions for businesses that want to start in that. And right now they have, I feel like I'm working for Shopify, I'm not, but they're offering a 90-day free trial for anyone that wants to get a shop set up and start. So yeah, I was looking into some of these options in preparation for this, and both of those options are really, really cool ways of getting into e-commerce quickly.
I think I've been contacted by lots of people this week looking to set up web shops, and my advice to them has always been the same: is that selling online is more difficult than you'd imagine, and people get more irate when they're online than they do when they're in person. So what I've been saying to everybody all week is aim low and achieve, like, to do something that's achievable. And like the likes of Square and Shopify and Squarespace, all these guys that have ready to go skinned web shops, do that and do simple, like, you know, maybe just a house blend or one other, and, you know, just an AeroPress or something. Just start and achieve something, learn a bit about it, and then go. The system we have is built off a backend that requires a developer and all sorts of stuff, and it's quite convoluted, but not everybody needs that. So I'd say with deliveries as well and your web shop, is aim low and achieve, and then build from there.
I think you're muted, Martin.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Peter, it's never been easier to get online right now. But to your point, they're calling. You know, it can be difficult. Selling online can be difficult. It's easy to do it and get started, but it is something you have to practice at. And, you know, Square Online Store, you know, not trying to pitch it, but yeah, it is an option for you if you're a Square seller. It takes your current inventory and makes it easy to post that online without having to do any additional work. So if you're a Square seller, it's a great opportunity for you right now to pivot to online.
On average, Martin, how long does it take people to make that pivot to actually go from not selling online to actually selling a web shop and having it going?
I've seen people get online the same day. It's just a matter of figuring out what it is you want to sell. I mean, that's probably one of the common mistakes or pitfalls that I see is people trying to do too much, right? They think they need to have their entire inventory or everything that they sell online immediately, where that's not necessarily the case. You can curate, you know, your menu, maybe your top selling items, and get those up and running for your loyal fan base to be able to buy those now, and then work towards, you know, adding the rest of your products and really fleshing everything out. But yeah, you can get online same day very easily.
Let's talk about that product selection. So far, Colin just said, you know, maybe a house blend. So I'm thinking maybe a flagship product, maybe some simple preparation equipment. I heard coffee filters come up. I know that that's something that can be challenging to get through online grocery and Amazon and stuff, but coffee shops can definitely provide those things. Are there any other sort of products that have been especially that we see is especially successful, Heather? What are kind of your most successful products?
Sorry, my computer didn't want to unmute. For us, it's just coffee, honestly. You know, something that we've kind of learned is we keep our offering of equipment really limited, simply because I can't compete with the Amazons of the world when it comes to price and some other things like that. And I don't want people kind of getting lost in a whirlwind and some of the items on my website distracting from what I do really well at, which is just the coffee piece. So we sell just kind of a few select. We just happen to choose Chemex filters and brewing devices as kind of our go-to. And then we sell Filtropa filters, and we kind of keep it pretty simple as to that. just because it's what we use in our stores a lot of times, and we focus on what we do really well, which is coffee. That being said, we have brew guides where we cover all of it. We just don't focus on really selling it. So everything that we sell, that we use in our stores, we kind of sell as a rule of thumb. But outside of that, we kind of let the players who specialize in the equipment and have the easy access to it and can get the good pricing on it, let them have that.
What about you, Colin? Anything unusual, or do people pretty much stick to the basics?
Yeah, it sounds like it's pretty much in line with what Heather was saying. Another thing that I think is quite important for people to remember is that it's very easy to just open a web shop and let people buy stuff. But then if someone's just bought a bag of coffee and you live in, I don't know, Texas, and they live in Kazakhstan, you now have a problem. Like, how do you get it there? You know, and sometimes the cost of that is a little bit more than you expected, or it's difficult to get someone to pick it up, or you've got to run it somewhere. So when we started doing online, actually even when we started doing wholesale, we only did Dublin only, and Dublin's a city of 1.5 million people. And then we did international, or then we did national. Then we did some international overseas when we through email. We only really opened up our retail online to international about 3 years ago. And then even still, it's difficult to get coffee to some parts of the world, so we have to take it off the website. So I think you get very excited about selling coffee online or selling things online, but then the logistics and the cost of getting it to the end user is a huge consideration. So again, aim low, achieve, I think is a good message to tell the people. You might, if you've got a local following where you are, you could just sell coffee to people that live in your district or in your city. And you know, word will get around, and people want to support your business because they know that you're down. And you can just drive it around and deliver it yourself as well. You know, if you're depending on the restrictions that are placed in your own city. A lot of people that are delivering goods in Dublin at the moment, they're asking people for their phone numbers. And when they're about 20 minutes away, they'll call them and ask them to leave the boot of their car open. What do you call a boot? The trunk. And then when they get there, they drive up to the car, they get their reg plate, they drive up, open the trunk, put the coffee in, close it over, and then the delivery's done. So people are being, you know, I wouldn't say that's a sustainable business model, but it's clever. And if you can do something like that in your local area, you'll get a lot of people telling their friends and texting and go, oh, you know, that coffee shop, this is what they did for me. And you can build up your business from them. And, you know, when you have the capability, go further afield.
Yeah,
that's the trend of curbside delivery is big right now.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Martin.
So yeah, to his point, curbside delivery here in the States is a huge trend right now. Where, you know, obviously contactless delivery is all the rage right now, but yeah, to his point, the curbside delivery, right? Being able to pull up or text or call, you know, 15 minutes out, I'm in this vehicle, I'll pop open the trunk or just, you know, throw it in my driver's side window and I'll be gone. You know, hugely popular right now.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, we've got a question from some of the observers, and I'd like to encourage now'd be a great time to start to get questions from any questions from the audience. But we've got one from Erica for Alex, and and the question is: there's only so many slots for top SEO search engine ratings. Do you have any advice on how to be competitive as the online market is getting flooded at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So I am by no means an SEO expert. We work with hundreds of our agency partners who are. And so I strongly encourage you to reach out to the agency that you work with. And if you don't have one currently, we are more than happy to share some of the agencies that we work with. And we work with everything from small business to enterprise. So we definitely have access to those agencies. But I would say one of the sort of, I guess if you want to say tactical things that you could do right now is Google your business. I'm not sure how often you guys do that, but at Trustpilot, we recommend that you Google your business plus reviews and see what comes up. Is there negative reviews online about your business? Is there nothing about your business? Do you even rank on the, you know, before the fold, as we like to say, for SEO? But right now, Amazon paid traffic has decreased. So there's an actual opportunity for people outside of this Amazon world to actually play fair in this game. And again, depends on your budget with paid, but there definitely could be opportunities. So happy to talk with you and give you some recommendations from our agency partners specific to your what's going on with your content, what's going on with your strategy, what's sort of happening right now with your marketing.
I can speak to that a little bit too, Peter.
Yeah.
Just a quick word. SEO is one part of like kind of a complete digital marketing strategy, and there are easier entry points to get in, especially if you're just launching an e-commerce site. Probably trying to spend a bunch of money or do a bunch of effort to raise your rankings in SEO right off the bat probably isn't like your highest percentage return on investment. Like really what you should be doing is speaking to the people that are already your customers who are home wanting to try your coffee. So Square, I know, for instance, you can get customer information from your register and send out a newsletter and tell everyone you launched your e-commerce site, and that's going to be your highest return right off the bat. So there's the SEO route, which is more of a longer term play, and to kind of Colin's idea, it's like start small and do it well, what you can do, or talk to your Facebook group if you have that already built. That's where your money's going to sit at the beginning.
Yeah, that really makes a lot of sense, and that's coming through loud and clear. It's not a sophisticated digital marketing strategy is important, perhaps once you're established, but early on, it seems like what you all are saying very clearly is focus on the people who are already your fans, communicate to them, sell to them, let them support your business. That's what the early phase is all about, and make them really happy through delivering a simple experience that you can achieve really highly on. I'm hearing that loud and clear.
Going to your coffee, they get what you do. They'll understand what you do. So there's less explaining to do. So if they buy beans from you, and they have the prices there, and a lot of online sales is about explaining to people. So we mentioned pre-grinding coffee earlier. When you send somebody a bag of pre-ground coffee, a lot of them will email you back and be like, "I made coffee and it was awful. You ground it wrong." And you're like, okay, so you have to do there's a few tentative conversations where you're talking like, oh, okay, well, talk me through what you did, and there's a little bit of that goes with it, So I think definitely selling to your existing base is a good way to start, because they'll already understand that with every online sale comes a degree of feedback and questions and comments. So you want to be able to monitor that or to reduce that as much as possible.
Great. Scott, there was a question from Israel that wanted to know a little bit more information on the Shopify thing you mentioned. You have any other details about that?
I mean, like I said earlier, I don't work for them, but I was just paging through and looking at what was out there. So it looks like a 90-day free trial probably, where you're not going to have to pay any fees for the website service. So that gives you time to be able to get your basic template and a little shop up free of charge during this time. So if you were thinking about experimenting with it, it's just right on shopify.com. So you can go read about it right there. It looks pretty simple and straightforward.
Got an interesting question from Lauren, talking about how this time of year cold brew consumption increases. And it is springtime. It's time to start drinking cold coffee. I'm wondering if there's any, she's wondering, is there any good way to support this online? Heather, have you done any work in the cold coffee space?
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenges that you have there are it's expensive to be able to ship cold, and cold brew is already not a cheap product, and then shipping it cold adds the cost quite substantially. For us, I think we're going to right now reserve cold brew something for curbside pickup, for takeout. We're switching out. We have refillable growlers, and we're switching those out with kind of plastic half gallons. That if you come in with your growler, we just give you a plastic half gallon. That in order to kind of keep that lower cost going for people who are loyal customers. There's definitely ways you can do it. You just have to decide at what point is it, hey, worth it to keep your brand in the forefront of people's mind, and kind of, hey, I want to be able to ship that cold brew. I think there's a lot of things that you can do also with teaching people how to cold brew at home. So doing a simple package where it's like, hey, we're going to give you this, coffee already ground, ready to go. So you get it at home, you put it in, whether it be a French press, some kind of an old school way to do cold brew at home, or some other ways there. Maybe you sell toddies on your website. I think there's a lot of opportunities to do it that way. I know people who ship cold brew. It's just, I know it's not something we're going to play with right now because it's expensive. Cold brew is already expensive to produce. It's expensive to make. It's expensive for people to buy. And then shipping cold is quite expensive as well. So it can definitely be done. I think one thing that people have to be careful at this point as well, depending on how big or how small, it depends on how much you can absorb of that cost in order to stay front and center in your customer's mind. But this isn't a time to kind of just bury yourself either just to get your product out there. I think, look at everything and make sure it makes sense and continues to make you a viable business.
Yeah, that's great. Colin, what about in Ireland? Is cold coffee a big part of what you do?
Well, the first time I went to the States was, 1997? And I nearly fell off my chair because I asked for a tea and somebody gave me something that was cold, had ice and lemon in it. So I didn't know what to think of it. The way you guys do things over there is slightly different over here. I think the cold brew market is definitely growing over here, but it's very much in its infancy. So I think I actually hadn't even thought about that until now. We sell some cold brew in the shop. Usually what we do is we started at Patrick's Day and we ended at Halloween. And we do a similar thing with salads and soups and with porridge and granola. They're the days where you switch it on and off. So I think for cold brew, probably the route I'd go down would probably be looking into seeing if we can get some cold brew equipment like the toddies or some of the Hario equipment that you can brew cold brew with. But I think we spoke earlier before we came online about the weather outside here. We've got a couple more weeks now before things start to defrost around here. So maybe we'll have a window of about a month or two.
Yeah, I think some of the conversation there makes me think that, obviously, Heather, that makes a lot of sense. It's really challenging to ship cold brew in liquid form, but with all the interest around learning new things, people learning new things, there's probably a big opportunity, I think, in people learning how to make, I think a lot of consumers think of cold brew as being kind of mysterious, and, using a toddy maker, using a French press, or even just using a pitcher is pretty easy to do. And that may create some opportunities over the next few months, as this first initial interest in brewing coffee at home, wanes and people want to get more creative and more vary it up a little bit in the coming weeks and months. And thinking about the future, there was a question from Anastasia about thinking about reopening shops post-quarantine, and that's probably something that we'll talk about in a future webinar about what about how do we know when to start to reopen retail spaces. But while we're thinking about the future, I'm wondering, I want to explore a little bit something that Colin mentioned, which was this is very likely to shift some behaviors. I mean, if people are buying expensive espresso machines now to install in their houses, I imagine that post this period, then people will have that machine there. They're going to want to keep using it if they've they've learned to use it, I think. So, I guess I'm wondering how we all imagine this segment might go. Scott, what do you think? I mean, you've been thinking about people preparing, especially coffee at home for a while. What do you think is in the future of this area?
I mean, I think we have a golden moment as an industry right now to really take on the education role. Both Heather and Colin mentioned this idea that brew guides are really popular. And something we've been experimenting with La Marzocco Home is we've been doing these massive Zoom home barista classes on Friday mornings. And the first week we had about 250 people show up for it. And then last week we had almost 350. And we were online for an hour talking about how to steam milk, which of all the espresso disciplines, it's probably the most boring and the ones usually people don't really want to talk about. But Out of the 350 people, we had 300 people there the full hour watching the class. So kind of the retention rate on that was insane. And as kind of to your question, I just think like this is going to change and people are going to experiment with making coffee at home. And there's going to be a lot of people that fall in love with that during this time period. And this is our moment. And I think to the thing I was saying earlier, people aren't drinking less coffee. They might be drinking worse coffee on a whole as Americans. So how do we take this opportunity, educate, and get people introduced to specialty coffee and start kind of moving the needle in our direction? I think that's the thing I keep thinking about right now. And also my question about pre-grinding. Or a pre-ground coffee. 75% of Americans buy their coffee pre-ground, and that's a kind of a no thing for a lot of specialty. But how are we talking to our marketplace now that they're not coming to our cafe and introducing them to experiences that maybe are incrementally better than what they have right now? That's the thing we're thinking about, and I hope we as an industry can really start pushing forward.
Yep, great. There was a question from Omid. Is it possible to run a roastery out of our cafe while the cafe is closed due to COVID-19? Is this a logical initiative? It's my impression that I think a lot of retailers who are roasting in a retail setting have done exactly that, closed their front door and aren't selling beverages anymore, but have switched entirely to whole bean. I think both Colin and Heather, you guys are both selling to go and delivery and stuff outside of out of your shops, but I guess it's possible to ship entirely to a roasted coffee platform. Yeah, that's my impression. And then I think another questioner has made the point about this point that I think is maybe one of the strongest point that we've made, which is this idea of starting small and making that work really well, and focusing on what you do well and delivering really well on that. So I guess with that, we'll and this observation that we may indeed be in a golden moment. I think that's something to really think about and see the opportunity in this pivot. I know that through the polling that we've done and the conversations that I've been having with many retailers like yourselves, they're starting to see the opportunity in all of this and the long-term opportunity in all of this. So with that opportunity in mind, I want to thank all of you panelists for sharing your expertise. I know that both Square and Trustpilot are ready to engage with people and support them. SCA will continue to share resources on our COVID-19 resource page that will host a lot of these platforms and opportunities here. And then our goal over the next weeks is to explore many of these topics that we've talked about: the importance of communicating with your customer base, how to have a safe retail shop in these times, and other topics that are raised here. So I encourage you that are viewing this webinar, if you haven't already, please sign up for the webinar series, and then you'll be able to join all the webinars as we do them. But for now, I'd like to thank each of you panelists for joining us, and wrap this up. So thanks, everyone.
Okay. Can I say one quick thing too? Just if one thing we're doing at La Marzocco USA is we're running a little program called Support Coffee. And if you are a roastery or somebody that's open out there, either serving to-go coffee or you're selling your coffee online, go to the La Marzocco USA Instagram, and we're sharing anyone that wants us to share out their information to our following, so that people can get more advertising and marketing about the fact that they're selling online. So go check that out, and we'd love to support you in any way we can.
Awesome.
Can I say something real quick, Peter?
Yes, please.
So just like Shopify is offering discounts, we do plugins to Shopify, WooCommerce, any of the e-commerce platforms. And we're also giving members here at least a 10% discount and then 1 month free, just so you can try it out, see how you like Trustpilot. Happy to do a quick demo for you. Feel free to reach out to me.
Great.
Thanks.
And I know
And we're doing a lot of, thank you, Peter. Yeah, we're doing a lot of the same. And it can feel intimidating for people to get started, but we're definitely here to help people, like you mentioned, to get up and running. And you don't need to be a tech whiz or anything like that to get started, or a programmer of any sort. You can get up and running right away. We do have a completely free platform available right now for that. So not a free trial or anything like that, just a completely free option for sellers to be able to get up and running right away. So thank you for the time today.
Great. All right, perfect. Well, lots of resources there available for people. So thanks again, everyone, for sharing, and thanks again to La Marzocco for sponsoring this series. And we'll see you on Wednesday for episode 3. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.